Come in. Come in. Oh, welcome. You've come on. Look at the weather. It's just one of those cold, haily, rainy days where you just want to be inside and cosy. Enjoy the comforts of the house. So I thought, why don't we, speaking of comforts and comfortable houses, let's drop back into Tolkien again, into Tolkien's Legendarium. I've moved the Hobbit to where it should be, which is here, the hardback Hobbit, amongst all the Tolkien related stuff. Anyway, what I thought might be fun is have a seat, to just look together again at the very first glimpse we get as readers of Tolkien, if we're talking about the order in which the books came out. So obviously starting with The Hobbit. The very first we ever hear, certainly the first I ever heard when I was a little boy and my father read it to me, of Rivendell, of Elrond's house, of the last homely house, as it's called. And it has, in my mind, one of the most perfect sentences to describe a home or a household ever written. It's just a glorious sentence. In fact, I think it's recollected. Tolkien knew he'd done all right with that. Let's put this down. It was recollected, in fact, and remembered in Lord of the Rings when, of course, they visit Rivendell again, and they remember what Bilbo had said about it long ago. So it's in a chapter, it's amazing how it's packed cleaner as a bookmark. It's in a chapter, quite an early chapter of The Hobbit called A Short Rest. And it's after they've escaped from the trolls, but before the great adventure of the Misty Mountains. So they come down into the valley, they go over the stream, they hear the elves laughing and singing. The elves are kind of more slightly and lightly drawn in this early account than they are in the Lord of the Rings. But then comes a kind of set-piece description of the house and Elrond. And it starts with a really, really true remark. It's almost Tolkien lifting his eyes from the story and speaking to you about what it's like to be a writer. And it's the remark about how hard it is to describe good things, even though the good things are the best things. So, this is what Tolkien says. Now, it's a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about and not much to listen to, while things that are uncomfortable, palpitating and even gruesome may make a good tale and take a great deal of telling anyway. They stayed long in that good house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. Bilbo would gladly have stopped there for ever and ever, even supposing a wish would have taken him right back to his hobbit hole without trouble. Yet there is little to tell about their stay. The master of the house was an elf friend, one of those people whose fathers come into the strange stories before the beginning of history, the wars of the evil goblins and the elves and the first men in the north. In those days of our tale, there were still some people who had both elves and heroes of the north for ancestors. I mean, he's later going to call Elrond, of course, Elrond the half-elven. And Elrond, the master of the house, was their chief. He was as noble and as fair in face as an elf lord, as strong as a warrior, as wise as a wizard, as venerable as a king of dwarves, and as kind as summer. It's not a lovely phrase, as kind as summer. He comes into many tales, but his part in the story of Bilbo's great adventure is only a small one, though important, as you will see, if we ever get to the end of it. Then here's the sentence that I think is just one of the glorious sentences in English. His house was perfect, whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all. Evil things did not come into that valley. I just think that's, even as an 8-year-old, that presented me an ideal for your own house, for your own household, that you'd have, whether you liked food, or sleep, or work, or storytelling, or singing, or just sitting and thinking best. And of course, storytelling and sitting and thinking are just what we need to do on a rather weathering, rainy day like today. And then the beautiful summary of that whole paragraph: evil things did not come into that valley. I wish I had time to tell you even a few of the tales or one or two of the songs that they heard in that house. Well, of course, later he does indeed have time to tell us, and we get the glorious Rivendell chapter in The Lord of the Rings. I wish I had time to tell you. All of them, the ponies as well, grew refreshed and strong in a few days there. Their clothes were mended, as well as their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes. It's a wonderful piece of rhetoric. He lets the word mended do so much work in that sentence. Their clothes were mended, as well as their bruises, their tempers, and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions, light to carry but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice. So the time came to Midsummer Eve, and they were to go on again with the early sun on Midsummer morning. And you know there's magic about to happen. It's that Midsummer Night, Midsummer Night's Dream. Elrond knew all about runes of every kind. That day he looked at the swords that they had brought from the troll's lair, and he said, "These are not troll make. They are old swords, very old swords of the high elves of the west, my kin. They were made in Gondolin for the goblin wars. They must have come from a dragon's hoard or goblin plunder, for dragons and goblins destroyed that city many ages ago. This Thorin, the rune's name Orcrist, the goblin cleaver, and in the ancient tongue of Gondolin, it was a famous blade. This Gandalf was Glandring, foe hammer that the king of Gondolin once wore. Keep them well." It's wonderful, your sudden sense of these vistas of the distant past and the kind of heirloom quality of the swords. "Whence did the trolls get them, I wonder?" said Thorin, looking at his sword with new interest. "I could not say," said Elrond, "but one may guess that your trolls plundered other plunderers, or came on old remnants of old robberies in some hole in the mountains of old. I've heard that there are still forgotten treasures to be found in the deserted caverns of the mines of Moria since the dwarf and goblin war." Thorin pondered these words. "I will keep this sword in honour," he said. "May it soon cleave goblins once again." "A wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains," said Elrond. So after this lovely episode in Rivendell, he's getting us set up for the next adventure. And then comes, we'll just finish with this, the lovely thing about maps. Tolkien, of course, famously drew maps of all his imaginary lands. And this is the point where, in a sense, Bilbo is standing in for Tolkien in some respects, because Bilbo suddenly talks about loving maps. And I love maps. I like poring over maps. I like being in places where maps are on the wall. "Show me your map." He took it and gazed long at it, and he shook his head, for if he did not altogether approve of dwarves and of their love of gold, he hated dragons and their cruel wickedness, and he grieved to remember the ruin of the town of Dale and its merry bells, and the burned banks of the bright river running. The moon was shining in a broad silver crescent. He held up the map, and the white light shone through it. "What is this?" he said. "There are moon letters here beside the plain runes, which say, 5 feet high the door, and 3 may walk abreast." "What are moon letters?" asked the hobbit, full of excitement. He loved maps, as I have told you before, and he also liked runes and letters and cunning handwriting, though when he wrote himself, it was a bit thin and spidery. "Moon letters are rune letters but you cannot see them," said Elrond. "Not when you look straight at them. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them. And what is more, with the more cunning sort, it must be the moon of the same shape and season as the day when they were written. The dwarves invented them and wrote them with silver pens, as your friends could tell you. These must have been written on a midsummer's eve in a crescent moon, a long while ago." "What do they say?" asked Gandalf and Thorin together, a bit vexed perhaps that even Elrond had found this out first, though really there'd not been a chance before, and there would not be another until goodness knows when. "Stand by the grey stone when the thrush knocks," read Elrond, "and the setting sun with the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole." I'm just wondering if there's a picture of the map we can see. There's a wonderful, wonderful painting of Rivendell. I seem to remember having had an edition where the maps were sort of in the end papers. But anyway, so there we have the pleasures of hospitality, the sense of a kind of enduring, continuing goodness. We have the vista back with the old swords, and we have the looking forward with the map. I mean, just as a piece of narrative, it's a fantastic piece of writing, and gives me pleasure. And of course, Rivendell becomes a permanent place of one's own mind. I mean, I can mentally, imaginatively, emotionally go to Rivendell anytime I like and build it up around myself and feel all the refreshment and all the kindness like summer in that most perfect of houses. Anyway, thanks for dropping in and sharing part of this rainy afternoon with me.